Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his world die. Through the massive viewing screen, he could see the orange flames spreading across the surface of Thylos Prime. The fires had been burning for 3 days now, ever since the Vorthic Empire had broken through the outer defense ring. His hands gripped the metal railing so hard that his knuckles turned white. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet desperation. The soft beeping of computers mixed with the distant rumble of explosions from the planet below. Every few seconds, another red light would flash on the damage control board. "Sir, we've lost contact with Defense Platform 7, reported his communications officer. The young Zelkari's voice shook slightly. "That's the last one in the northern sector." Kethver nodded slowly. He had expected this news, but it still felt like a punch to his stomach. Defense Platform 7 had been protecting the main evacuation center. Without it, the civilian ships on the ground would be sitting targets. "What about the evacuation ships?" he asked. "Still loading civilians, sir. Captain Velinoth reports they need at least 2 more hours to get everyone aboard." 2 hours. Kethver looked at the tactical display floating in front of him. Red dots showed Vorthic ships moving closer to the planet. His own fleet's blue dots were scattered and few. "Too few. We don't have 2 hours," he whispered to himself. The Vorthic Empire had appeared in their space 6 months ago, like a storm of metal and death. Nobody knew where they came from. They didn't talk or negotiate. They just attacked, conquered, and moved on. Planet after planet had fallen to their advance. Entire civilizations had been wiped out or enslaved. Now it was the Zelkari's turn. Kethver's species had been peaceful for over 1,000 years. They built beautiful cities, studied science, and created art. Their military was small and mostly used for protecting trade routes from pirates. They had never faced anything like the Vorthic. The enemy ships were huge, dark things that looked more like machines than spacecraft. They moved in perfect formation and attacked without mercy. Their weapons could punch through Zelkari shields like they were made of paper. Worse, they seemed to learn from every battle, adapting their tactics to counter any defense. "Sir, incoming transmission from the surface," the communications officer called out. "Put it on screen." The image of Dr. Lisa Veltar appeared on the main display. She was standing in what looked like a research facility, but Kethver could see smoke and debris behind her. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled, and there was a cut on her forehead. "Admiral, I'm broadcasting on all frequencies, sending out distress calls to every known civilization," she said quickly. "Maybe someone out there can help us." Kethver felt a bitter smile cross his face. "Doctor, every species that could help us is either dead or fighting for their own survival. The Altarians lasted 2 weeks. The Corvan Republic fell in 4 days. We're alone. I have to try," she insisted. "I'm including all our scientific data, our history, everything we are. If we're going to die, at least someone should know we existed." The transmission cut out as another explosion lit up the planet's surface. "Sir, Vorthak ground forces have reached the capital city," reported the tactical officer. "They're moving toward the spaceport." Kethver closed his eyes for a moment. The spaceport was where most of the evacuation ships were docked. 50,000 Zelkari civilians were still down there, including children, elderly, and wounded. They were the last of his people. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. 12, sir, including us." 12 ships against a Vorthek fleet of over 200. The odds were impossible, but Kethver had run out of choices. "All ships. This is Admiral Kethver," he said into his communicator. "We're going to buy the evacuation fleet some time. Form up on my position and prepare for final attack." He looked around the bridge and his crew. These people had served with him for years. They had families down on the planet, friends who were counting on them. They deserved better than this hopeless last stand. "Sir," his weapons officer spoke up, What are our orders? Keffer straightened his shoulders. We're going to ram the Vorthik mothership. If we can take out their command vessel, it might disrupt their attack long enough for the civilians to escape. Nobody argued. They all knew it was a suicide mission, but they also knew it was their only chance to save their people. The 12 remaining Zelkari ships moved toward the enemy fleet like tiny fish swimming toward a school of sharks. The Vorthik vessels were already launching fighters and charging their weapons. In a few minutes, it would all be over. On the planet below, the evacuation ships were finally lifting off. Keffer could see them on his sensors, dozens of small transport vessels climbing slowly through the atmosphere. They were heavy with refugees and moved like wounded birds trying to fly. But the Vorthik had seen them too. Enemy fighters were already changing course to intercept. "Sir, the evacuation ships won't make it," the tactical officer reported. "The Vorthik fighters will reach them in 4 minutes." Keffer felt something cold settle in his chest. After everything they had sacrificed, after all the brave people who had died defending their world, his people would still be slaughtered in the end. He was about to give the order to begin their final attack when something impossible happened. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy signatures at the edge of the system," the sensor operator called out, his voice filled with confusion. "What kind of signatures?" "Unknown, sir. 12 contacts, moving at incredible speed. They're not in any of our databases." Keffer stared at the tactical display as 12 new dots appeared on the screen. They were moving faster than anything he had ever seen, coming straight toward the battle. "Are they Vorthik reinforcements?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. These ships moved differently, with a fluid grace that the mechanical Vorthik vessels lacked. "No, sir. The energy patterns are completely different. These are ... These are something new." As the unknown ships got closer, Keffer could make out details on the long-range sensors. They were sleek and powerful looking, with strange markings on their hulls. The lead ship was larger than the others, clearly some kind of command vessel. "Sir, they're not responding to our communications," the communications officer reported. "But I'm picking up transmissions between their ships. The language is unknown." Keffer watched the display with growing hope and fear. Whoever these newcomers were, they would tip the balance of the battle one way or another. If they were allies, the evacuation ships might have a chance. If they were enemies, or if they sided with the Vorthik, then the Zelkari would face extinction even faster. Unknown fleet reached the outer edge of the battle zone and suddenly slowed. For a long moment, everything was quiet except for the hum of the ship's engines and the rapid breathing of the bridge crew. Then, without any warning or communication, the mysterious ships opened fire on the Vorthik fleet. The weapons they used were unlike anything Keffer had ever seen. Brilliant beams of energy tore through Vorthik shields like they weren't even there. The first volley destroyed 6 enemy cruisers in a matter of seconds. "By the ancestors," whispered the tactical officer, "who are these people?" Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U.S. Liberty and watched the slaughter unfold on his main screen. The Vorthik fleet was tearing apart what remained of the alien defenders. Massive dark ships moved like hungry predators through space, their weapons carving through smaller vessels with brutal efficiency. "Tactical report," he ordered, his voice calm despite the violence playing out before them. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her console. 12 human vessels against approximately 200 Vorthik ships, sir. The defending fleet appears to be down to their last few vessels. I'm reading massive civilian evacuations from the planet's surface." Jake nodded. This was exactly what they had expected to find. For 3 months, the human expeditionary fleet had been tracking the Vorthak expansion, staying hidden in the outer systems while they studied their enemy. They had watched world after world fall to the mechanical empire, learning their tactics and weaknesses. "Sir, The evacuation ships are trying to break orbit, reported Communications Officer Tony Martinez. But Vorthik fighters are moving to intercept. Those transports won't make it. Jake felt the familiar cold anger settle in his chest. It was the same feeling he had experienced when watching recordings of other worlds falling to the Vorthak. Innocent people dying while their defenders were overwhelmed by superior numbers. "All ships, this is Morrison," he spoke into his communicator. "Execute Thunder Protocol. Primary targets are the fighter squadrons threatening the evacuation fleet. Secondary targets are the command vessels. Rules of engagement are weapons free. Around." His bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for this moment countless times during their long journey to this system. Every officer knew their role. Every gunner knew their targets. "UES Constitution acknowledges," came the voice of Captain Lisa Turner over the comm. "My fighters are ready to launch." "UES Defiance standing by," added Commander Ryan Blake. "All weapons charged and ready." Jake looked at the tactical display one more time. The Vorthik had never faced human technology before. They had no idea what was about to hit them. "Fire," he ordered simply. The space around the human fleet lit up like a star going nova. 12 ships unleashed a coordinated barrage that tore through the Vorthik formation like lightning through a thundercloud. The enemy's energy shields, which had proven nearly impenetrable to the alien defenders, collapsed under the focused assault of human particle cannons and plasma torpedoes. 6 Vorthik cruisers exploded in the first 3 seconds of combat. There, debris spread out in glowing clouds that lit up the darkness of space. "Direct hits across the board," Amy reported, her voice filled with satisfaction. "Enemy shield frequencies are exactly as predicted from our intelligence gathering." The Vorthak fleet, which had been moving in perfect formation toward the planet, suddenly broke apart in confusion. Their commanders had never encountered weapons that could penetrate their defenses so easily. Some ships tried to retreat, others attempted to regroup, but the human attack had shattered their coordination. "Launch all fighters," Jake commanded. "Priority is protecting those evacuation ships." Captain Lisa Turner's voice crackled over the communication system as her fighter squadron launched from the UES Constitution. "Alpha Squadron away. Tally-ho, people. Let's show these metalheads what human pilots can do." Jake watched on his screen as 36 human fighters streaked toward the Vorthak squadron that was closing in on the civilian transports. The enemy fighters outnumbered them 3-1, but Jake had seen human pilots in action before. Numbers didn't always matter. The first engagement lasted less than 2 minutes. Human fighters moved with an aggressiveness and unpredictability that the Vorthak couldn't match. Where the enemy flew in rigid formations, the humans scattered and reformed like a school of fish, attacking from unexpected angles and using maneuvers that defied conventional tactics. "Splash 4 bogeys," came Lisa's voice over the radio. "Make. That's 6. These guys fly like they're following a computer program." "That's because they probably are," Jake muttered to himself. Intelligence reports suggested that the Vorthik were more machine than biological, which explained their predictable battle patterns. Commander Ryan Blake's heavy cruiser UES Defiance had carved a path straight through the center of the Vorthik battle line. His ship's massive guns were designed for one purpose: destroying enemy capital ships. Each shot from his main batteries was like a small nuclear explosion, and the Vorthak vessels simply couldn't absorb that kind of punishment. "Defiance to liberty," Ryan's voice came through the comm system. "I'm seeing some kind of command ship at the center of their formation. It's 3 times the size of their other vessels." Jake studied the tactical display. The massive Vorthik mothership was hanging back from the main battle, surrounded by a protective screen of smaller vessels. It was probably coordinating the entire attack on the planet. "All ships, new primary target is the enemy mothership," Jake announced. "If we can take out their command and control, the rest of their fleet should lose coordination. But as the human ships moved toward their new target, the Vorthok began to adapt. The remaining enemy vessels started moving in new patterns, trying to surround the smaller human fleet. Their weapons began firing in coordinated volleys designed to overwhelm human shields through sheer volume. "Sir, they're learning from our attacks," Amy reported with concern. "Their battle computers are analyzing our tactics and adjusting." Jake smiled grimly. "Then it's time to show them something they can't analyze." He opened a channel to all ships. "This is Morrison. Switch to Pattern Delta, authorization code, remember the Alamo." Every human captain knew what Pattern Delta meant. It was the most aggressive attack formation in their tactical manual, designed for situations where victory required taking enormous risks. Ships would break formation and attack independently, using human creativity and intuition instead of predetermined battle plans. The effect was immediate and devastating. Where moments before the human fleet had been moving in organized squadrons, now 12 ships scattered across the battlefield like wild cards. Each captain chose their own targets and attack vectors, making it impossible for the Vorthok battle. Computers to predict their movements. Captain Lisa Turner took her ship directly into the heart of the enemy formation, her guns blazing as she spun and twisted through a maze of enemy fire. Commander Ryan Blake used his heavy cruiser like a battering ram, smashing through enemy lines and destroying everything in his path. The smaller human vessels, frigates and destroyers, darted between the massive Vorthok ships like angry wasps, targeting critical systems and leaving disabled hulks in their wake. "This is incredible," came a transmission from one of the surviving alien defenders. The voice was filled with amazement. "Who are these warriors?" Jake didn't have time to answer. His own ship was deep in the enemy formation now, trading fire. With 3 Vorthok cruisers at once, the Liberty's shields flared and sparked under the bombardment, but her human-designed armor held strong. "Return fire, all batteries," he ordered. "Target their engine systems." The Liberty's guns spoke in unison, sending streams of coherent energy into the nearest Vorthok vessel. The enemy ship's engine section exploded in a brilliant flash, sending it spinning helplessly out of control. On his tactical display, Jake could see that the tide of battle was turning. More than half of the Vorthok fleet had been destroyed or disabled, and their formation was completely broken. The massive mothership was still intact, but its protective screen was gone. "Sir, the evacuation ships are clearing the atmosphere," Tony reported. "They're requesting escort to the edge of the system," Jake nodded. "Lisa, take your fighters and escort those transports to safety. The rest of us will finish cleaning up here." As he watched the civilian ships climbing toward the stars, carrying the last survivors of another world, Jake felt the familiar mixture of satisfaction and sadness that came with these rescue missions. They had saved these people, but how many? Others had died before the humans arrived. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien flagship," Amy announced. "They want to know who we are." Admiral Kefver watched in stunned silence as the mysterious warriors systematically destroyed the Vorthok fleet. Their ships moved with a deadly grace that seemed almost impossible, where his own forces had been crushed by the enemy's superior numbers. These newcomers were turning the tables completely. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," his communications officer reported, still sounding shocked by what they were witnessing. "Put it through," Kefver ordered. The face that appeared on his screen was unlike any species he had ever seen. The being had pale skin, dark hair, and strange blue eyes that seemed to hold both intelligence and something else. Something that made Kefver feel both grateful and slightly afraid. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth ship Liberty," the being said in accented but understandable galactic standard. "Are you the commanding officer of the defending fleet?" "I am Admiral Kefver of the Zulkari Republic," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. We are grateful for your intervention, Captain Morrison. But I must ask, who are you? Your species is not in any of our databases. Jake's expression remained serious. We are humans, Admiral. We've been tracking the Vorthic expansion for several months. Our intelligence suggested they would attack your system next. Humans, Kethver repeated slowly. Where do you come from? How did you develop such advanced weapons? Those are long stories, Admiral. Right now we need to focus on finishing this battle. The Vorthic mothership is still functional, and they're calling for reinforcements. As if to prove his point, space near the edge of the system began to shimmer as more Vorthic vessels prepared to drop out of hyperspace. The enemy had lost most of their fleet, but they were bringing in more ships to continue the attack. How many more are coming? Kethver asked. Our sensors show approximately 40 vessels, Jake replied. But don't worry, Admiral. We've been preparing for this kind of fight for a long time. The way he said it sent a chill down Kethver's spine. There was something in the human's voice that suggested these beings were not strangers to warfare. All human ships, this is Morrison. Jake's voice came over the open communication channels. Vorthic reinforcements arriving in 2 minutes. Switch to Formation Charlie. Colonel Hayes, you're authorized to begin boarding operations. Kethver watched as the human fleet reorganized itself with frightening efficiency. 3 of their ships moved toward the crippled Vorthic vessels, while the others formed a defensive screen around the planet. Admiral, Jake continued, we're going to need your help. Can your remaining ships assist in evacuating any survivors from the planet's surface? Of course, Kethver replied immediately. But Captain Morrison, those boarding operations your people are planning. The Vorthic ships are heavily defended. My Marines tried to board one of their vessels early in the war. None of them came back. Jake's expression hardened. Admiral, with respect, your Marines aren't human Marines. Before Kethver could ask what that meant, the first wave of Vorthic reinforcements arrived. The new ships immediately began targeting the human vessels, their weapons firing in perfect coordination. But the humans were ready for them. Colonel Danny Hayes led the boarding parties from the UES Ranger, a ship designed specifically for close-quarters combat. His troops wore heavy armor and carried weapons that seemed to glow with their own inner light. As their assault shuttles launched toward the damaged Vorthic vessels, Hayes spoke calmly over the radio. Remember, people, these machines don't negotiate. And they don't surrender. Hit them hard and fast. Secure the command centers and download everything you can find. Kethver watched the human boarding shuttles dart between laser fire and missile explosions. Several were hit, but they kept flying. When they reached the Vorthic ships, the humans didn't dock at airlocks like normal boarding parties. Instead, they used some kind of cutting tool to burn holes directly through the enemy hull. Incredible, whispered his tactical officer. They're going straight through the armor. The battle in space was equally impressive. Captain Beth Hayes, commanding the UES Thunderbolt, led her squadron in a series of attacks that seemed to defy physics. Her ships would appear suddenly out of nowhere, strike with devastating precision, then disappear before the enemy could return fire. How are they moving like that? Kethver asked his sensor operator. I don't know, sir. It's like they can predict where the enemy will be before the enemy knows it themselves. The truth was even more impressive. The humans had spent months studying Vorthic tactics, learning their patterns and weaknesses. Every move the enemy made had been analyzed and countered. But it was more than just preparation. These beings seemed to have an instinctive understanding of warfare that went beyond mere technology. Commander Tom Chun, directing electronic warfare from the UES Phantom, was turning the Vorthic's own systems against them. Computer viruses and logic bombs spread through the enemy fleet like a plague, causing ships to fire on each other or shut down completely. This is impossible, Chun reported over the radio, sounding almost amused. Their computer security is like something from a children's toy. It's like they've never faced anyone who could hack their systems. Major Kate Williams led ground forces that were already landing on the planet's surface. Her soldiers moved through the burning cities with a combination of tactical precision and raw determination that amazed the Zelkari defenders who fought alongside them. Human ground forces, this is Zelkari Defense Command, came a transmission from the planet. We have civilians trapped in the northern sector. Vorthic ground units are closing in. Copy that, Defense Command, Kate replied immediately. Charlie Company, you're with me. We're going to get those people out. Kefver listened to the communications chatter from the surface as Kate's forces engaged the Vorthak ground troops. The sounds of battle were intense, but there was something else in the human voices. They seemed to be enjoying themselves. Contact front. Machine unit advancing on the school. I see them. Jackson, take your squad left. Murphy, you're with me. We're going straight up the middle. Sir, that's suicide. There are too many of them. Son, there's no such thing as too many when you're fighting for kids. Follow me. The battle on the surface raged for 2 hours. When it was over, the human forces had not only rescued the trapped civilians, but had destroyed the entire Vorthak ground army. They had done it with a combination of superior tactics, advanced weapons, and something that Keffer was beginning to understand was uniquely human: the willingness to take insane risks to protect innocent people. Admiral, Jake's voice came over the communication system. We've secured the system. The Vorthak mothership has been disabled, and their ground forces are eliminated. Your people are safe. Keffer looked at the tactical display in amazement. In less than 4 hours, the humans had completely destroyed a Vorthak fleet that had taken his people months to weaken. More importantly, they had done it while suffering minimal casualties themselves. Captain Morrison, he said slowly, how is this possible? Your fleet is smaller than ours was, yet you've achieved what we could not. Jake was quiet for a moment before answering. Admiral, we've been studying the Vorthak for a long time. We know their weaknesses. But more than that, we know something they don't. What is that? We know what we're fighting for. The Vorthak fight to conquer and destroy. We fight to protect and preserve. That makes all the difference. As the last of the Vorthak ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, Keffer realized that these humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. They were warriors, yes, but they were warriors with a purpose that went beyond mere conquest or survival. They were something new in the galaxy. Something that gave hope to those who had lost it. The celebration on Philos Prime was short-lived. Admiral Keffer had barely begun to process their miraculous rescue when his sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Sir, I'm reading energy signatures from the Vorthak mothership. His tactical officer reported. They're charging some kind of weapon. On the main screen, the massive enemy vessel hung in space like a wounded beast. Most of its weapons were destroyed, its engines were offline. But something deep in its core was building power. Captain Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy buildup from that mothership. Our scan suggested some kind of biological weapon. Dr. Lisa Veltar's panicked voice suddenly broke through on the emergency frequency. All ships, this is the Planetary Research Center. We're detecting atmospheric contamination spreading from the northern continent. The Vorthak have released something into our air. Keffer felt his heart sink. Even in defeat, the enemy was trying to complete their mission of destruction. What kind of contamination? It's a bioweapon, Admiral. Something that targets our respiratory system. Anyone who breathes it will die within hours. The wind patterns will spread it across the entire planet in 12 hours. The bridge fell silent. After everything they had endured, after the humans had saved them from military defeat, the Vorthak were still going to kill every living thing on the planet. Can it be stopped? Jake asked over the communication channel. The only way is to destroy the source, Dr. Veltar replied. But it's located deep inside the mothership's core. Someone would have to get inside and manually detonate the weapon containment system. That's a suicide mission, Cuthbert said quietly. The radiation levels inside that ship would kill anyone in minutes. Jake was silent for a long moment. Then, his voice came back, calm and determined. Not necessarily. Our suits can handle more radiation than yours can. Before anyone could respond, another voice came over the radio. It was Sergeant Nick Parker, one of the human Marines who had been part of the boarding operations. Captain Morrison, sir, this is Parker. My squad is already aboard one of the damaged Vorthik vessels. We can reach the mothership's docking bay in about 10 minutes. Sergeant, the radiation levels will be lethal even for our equipment, Jake replied. Yes, sir, I understand. But there are 50,000 people on that planet who are going to die if we don't do something. My squad volunteers for the mission. Kefver listened to this exchange with growing amazement. These humans were talking about certain death as if it was just another assignment. Parker, you have a wife and 2 kids back on Earth, Jake said, his voice heavy with emotion. Yes, sir, I do, and that's exactly why I'm going to do this. Because somewhere down on that planet, there are other fathers with wives and kids. They deserve the same chance mine have. There was a long pause. Then Jake's voice came back, filled with pride and sadness. Permission granted, Sergeant. Godspeed. Admiral Keffer opened a channel to the human Marines. Sergeant Parker, this is Admiral Keffer. Why are you doing this? My people are strangers to you. You owe us nothing. Nick Parker's voice was steady when he answered. Admiral, where I come from, we have a saying. No one fights alone. Your people are fighting for their lives, so that makes them our people too. The next hour was the longest of Keffer's life. He watched on his sensors as the small human shuttle made its way from the damaged Vorthik ship to the mothership. The bioweapon continued to spread across the planet below, carried by the wind toward the major population centers. Dr. Emma Foster, the human fleet's xenobiologist, worked frantically with Dr. Veltar to develop some kind of countermeasure. Her ship, the U.S. Mercy, had docked with the Zelkari medical station in orbit. I'm sharing all our biological research data with you, Emma said as she worked alongside the Zelkari scientists. Maybe together we can find a way to neutralize this weapon. Dr. Veltar looked at the human woman with amazement. This research represents decades of your people's work. Why are you giving it to us so freely? Emma paused in her work and looked at her. Because knowledge is meant to be shared, especially when lives are at stake. If our research can save your people, then that's what it's for. Engineer Paul Davis from the UES Liberty was meanwhile transferring advanced shield technology to the Zelkari ships. These generators will protect you from most energy weapons, he explained to the Zelkari technicians. The frequency modulators are the key to their effectiveness. But this technology, one of the Zelkari engineers protested, it must be worth a fortune. Your people spent years developing it. Paul shrugged. Maybe, but what good is advanced technology if there's no one left to use it? Besides, my grandfather always told me that the best way to keep something valuable is to give it away to people who need it. Down on the planet, the bioweapon continued its deadly spread. The first reports of casualties began coming in from the outer settlements. People were collapsing in the streets, their lungs unable to process the contaminated air. Mothership infiltration team, report. Jake's voice called over the radio. This is Parker, came the strained reply. We're inside the core chamber. The radiation is worse than expected. Johnson and Martinez are already down. But we found the weapon system. Can you stop it? Yes, sir, but the detonation system is manual. Someone has to stay behind to trigger it. The explosion will destroy this whole section of the ship. Jake closed his eyes. Understood, Sergeant. Sir, there's something else. We found databanks containing information about other worlds the Vorthik are planning to attack. Downloading it now. At least other people will have warning. Even facing certain death, the human Marines were thinking about saving other civilizations they had never met. Parker, is there anything you want me to tell your family? Jake asked quietly. Tell them I was thinking about them when I did this. And tell them that somewhere in space, there are people named Zelkari who are alive because of what we did here today. Tell them that makes it worth it. The explosion that destroyed the Vorthik mothership lit up space like a small sun. The bioweapon production facility was completely vaporized, and the contamination in the planet's atmosphere began to break down within hours. Sergeant Nick Parker and his squad had saved 50,000 lives with their sacrifice. As the human fleet prepared to leave the system, Admiral Keffer met with Captain Morrison one last time. They stood on the observation deck of the Zelkari flagship, looking out at the debris field that had once been the Vorthak fleet. Why do your people do this? Keffer asked. Fight for strangers, die for people you've never met? Jake was quiet. For a long time. Admiral, a long time ago, my people learned something important. We learned that in this universe, there are those who create and those who destroy. Those who build and those who tear down. Those who protect and those who prey. On the week, he turned to look at the Zelkari Admiral. We decided which side we wanted to be on. And once you make that choice, it doesn't matter if the people you're protecting are human or Zelkari or any other species. What matters is that they're people, and people deserve a chance to live. But the cost, Keffer said. You lose good. People in every battle. Yes, we do, Jake replied sadly. But Parker was right. We don't fight alone. Every person we save, every civilization we protect, they become part of something bigger. They become part of the reason we keep fighting. As the human ships prepared to jump to hyperspace, Keffer realized that he had witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that fought not for conquest or territory or resources, but simply because it was the right thing. To do that, the humans were showing the galaxy what it meant to be truly civilized. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Keffer stood in the memorial garden that the humans had helped his people build. 12 crystal monuments rose from the ground, each one bearing the name of a human who had died saving Thylos Prime. The largest crystal was dedicated to Sergeant Nick Parker and his squad, who had given their lives to stop the BIOWEAPON. Captain Jake Morrison walked quietly beside him. The human leader looked tired, older somehow than he had during the battle. Behind them, the last of the human ships were preparing to leave orbit. Your people want you to stay, Keffer said. The Council has voted unanimously to offer you permanent alliance with the Zelkari Republic. We want to learn from you, to become your partners in this fight against the Vorthik. Jake nodded slowly. I'm honored by the offer, Admiral. But there are other worlds out there that need help. Other civilizations facing the same choice your people faced 3 days ago. How many? Keffer asked. Too many, Jake replied. Our long-range scouts have identified at least 20 systems under immediate threat. The Corvani Collective will fall within 2 weeks if no one helps them. The Alterian colonies are already under siege. Keffer felt a familiar weight in his chest. The same hopelessness he had felt when watching his own world burn. How do you do it? How do you carry the burden of knowing that people are dying while you're traveling between the stars? Jake stopped walking and looked at the crystal memorial. We remember why we fight. Every person we save, every world we protect, they all matter. Parker knew that when he made his choice. His children will grow up in a universe where the Zelkari exist because their father believed that all life has value. The communication device on Jake's belt chirped softly. He listened for a moment, then looked at Keffer with regret. That was my navigation officer. We need to leave within the hour if we're going to reach the Corvani system in time. Before you go, Keffer said urgently, there's something my people need to know. What do you call yourselves? Your species name translates strangely in our language. Jake smiled, the first genuine smile Keffer had seen from him. We're called humans, Admiral. In our oldest language, it means people of the earth. But over the years, it's come to mean something more. What does it mean now? It means the ones who choose to care. Dr. Lisa Veltar approached them from across the garden. She carried a data pad containing weeks of research that she and Dr. Emma Foster had completed together. Captain Morrison, before you leave, I want to give you something. She handed him the device. It's everything we know about Vorthik technology, biology, and tactics. Combined with your research, it might help you save other worlds more efficiently. Jake accepted the data pad gratefully. Thank you, Doctor. This will save lives. There's something else, she continued. My government has authorized me to share our star charts with you. We've marked all the safe routes through this sector, as well as dangerous areas to avoid. There are also locations of fuel depots and supply stations that are friendly to refugees. Chief Navigator Helen Brooks, who had been working with the Zalkari navigation teams, stepped forward. Dr. Veltar has also trained some of my staff in advanced stellar cartography techniques that could take us years to develop on our own. Your people are generous teachers. Medical Officer Dr. Carl Stone joined the group, carrying the medical kit. Admiral, I'm leaving behind treatment protocols for every biological weapon we've encountered. Your medical teams now know how to counter most Vorthik bioweapons. With luck, they'll never need to use that knowledge. Keffer looked around at the humans who had gathered to say goodbye. Each one had shared something valuable with his people. Knowledge that had taken them generations to acquire, given freely to strangers they had known for less than a week. I still don't understand, he said. Why do you give so much and ask for nothing in return? Commander Sarah Mitchell, who had led the final assault on the Vorthak mothership, answered. Admiral, we're fighting a war against people who believe that might makes right, that the strong should prey on the weak. Every time we help someone, every time we share our knowledge or our technology, we're proving them wrong. The Vorthik think that conquest is the natural order of things, added Engineer Paul Davis. They can't understand cooperation or generosity, or sacrifice for others. Those concepts are foreign to them. That's why we'll eventually win this war. As the human officers began returning to their ships, Keffer walked with Jake toward the shuttle bay. Captain, there's one more thing I need to know. How long have your people been fighting this war? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Officially? About 6 months since we first detected the Vorthik threat. Unofficially? We've been preparing for this kind of war for most of our history. What do you mean? My people have a long history of standing up to bullies, Admiral. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we succeed, but we never stop trying. When we first detected what the Vorthik were doing to other civilizations, there was never any question about what we would do. They reached the shuttle bay where Jake's transport was waiting. Through the windows, Keffer could see human crew members making final preparations for departure. Will we see you again? Keffer asked. Maybe, Jake replied. But I hope not. Why? Because if you see us again, it will probably mean you're in trouble. I'd rather your people live in peace and prosperity, building a better future for your children. As Jake's shuttle launched toward the human fleet, Keffer received one final communication from the humans. It was from Captain Lisa Turner aboard the UES Constitution. Admiral, we're transmitting the locations of 3 other civilizations in this sector who have successfully defended themselves against Vorthik attacks. They might be willing to share defensive technologies and tactics with your people. Building a network of mutual defense is the best way to prevent future attacks. The human fleet began jumping to hyperspace one ship at a time. Each departure was marked by a brief flash of light as the vessel stretched into infinity and disappeared. Within minutes, the Thylos system was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. It was the silence of hope, rather. Then despair. Veltar stood beside Keffer as they watched the last human ship vanish into the stars. "Do you think we'll ever become like them?" she asked. "What do you mean? Strong enough to help others the way they helped us. Brave enough to make the sacrifices they make." Keffer considered the question carefully. "I don't know if we'll ever be exactly like them, but maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to become the best version of ourselves that we can be." Over the following weeks, reports began reaching Thylos Prime from across the galaxy. Strange stories that spread through the communication networks like wildfire. Stories of mysterious ships that appeared when all hope was lost. Stories of warriors who fought not for conquest but for justice. The Corvani Collective reported that 12 unknown vessels had arrived just as their homeworld was about to fall. The ships bore markings in an alien script that roughly translated to names like Liberty, Justice, and Hope. The Alterian colony sent word that their siege had been broken by warriors who called themselves humans. The same beings had left behind medical supplies and defensive technologies before disappearing back into space. More and more civilizations began reporting similar encounters. Always the same pattern: arrival at the moment of greatest need, devastating victory against impossible odds, generous sharing of knowledge and resources, then departure to help the next world in danger. The galaxy was learning a new word: hope. And with it, they were learning what it meant to be human. In the memorial garden on Thylos Prime, children played among the crystal monuments, laughing and running in the sunlight. Their parents watched from nearby benches, knowing that their children would grow up in a universe where someone, somewhere, was always standing guard against the darkness. Above them, a small monitoring station watched the edge of the system, its sensors scanning the stars for any sign of returning threat. But it also watched for something else: the distinctive energy signatures of 12 ships that might someday return, bringing with them the promise that no one fights alone. The humans had kept their word. The galaxy would never be the same.